then an amazing woman who was really, I mean, she and I go back quite a ways. And I love that she's teaching today on the armor of light. And she has spoken in almost every single one of my summits. I'm thinking, I don't know if there's a single one she missed. And so each one has been a different topic. And I do get to take a little piece of the credit in getting those messages out there as her audio visual person. At one point in time, we created CDs together. Now CDs are long gone, but I still have a collection, I will say.
Yeah.
So Kathy has over 20 years experience teaching, mentoring, presenting, writing, and working with clients concerning healing their emotional wounds and generational pathologies, as well as dealing with life's everyday trials and challenges. This includes working with issues related to abuse, trauma, addiction, relationship issues, parenting, self-worth, lack of purpose, and more. And so, Kathy, I'm curious, do you still see clients almost every day? Is it how many a week?
I do.
Wow. And
Even
so
weekends sometimes.
mostly telehealth now, or?
Yes, ever since COVID, it's like phone and Zoom, and I actually have clients all over the world.
And I love that about you. You've even been to Japan.
Yeah.
You got an amazing opportunity there. I remember that a few years ago as they brought you to Japan to teach. And so, yes, you are an international, we need to put that in there, international speaker and teacher.
Yeah.
And her topic today is radiating resilience, unveiling the armor of God's light. And so I'm going to let you take it away. Thank you for being part of Summit number 11.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. I always love this opportunity. Great. Great. I had a client come to see me because she was going to go to a family reunion, and she was going to be seeing her father, who she had not seen in 20 years. The thing is this father had sexually abused her when she was a child, and she was an absolute nervous wreck about going to this family reunion. She came to see me to see what she needed to do. Did she need to put up a big shield? You know, what did she need to do to protect herself? And so this class is really born out of the counsel that I was able to give her that day. And as we go on along, I will let you know what that counsel was. But what she did actually worked. She said that her father would come up towards her and would get a certain distance away from her, would kind of get a confused look on his face, and then would turn and go the other direction. And when she came back after the family reunion, she was so thrilled. And she had felt safe and she had felt protected. And this had really worked for her. But it's not exactly the traditional way that we generally think of shielding ourselves. At our deepest center, there exists a reservoir of pure, selfless love. The natural man has covered this up with a hard shell over his heart, but the love is still there. The hard shell, or the hard heart, has been formed as a protection to keep pain out, but it also keeps God out. The true protection for our hearts is the power of love. Through the light of Christ, we can start by taking down the walls around our heart to more fully give and receive our love. So the scripture Proverbs says he is a shield unto them that put their trust in him. Instead of putting a shield up, my counsel is to radiate light, to push out your aura, to brighten your light so that it shines further and stronger. As my client, she wanted to put up a shield, and I use muscle testing as a tool. And I had her put her arm up, and I pushed on it, and I said, I want you to say, I am shielding myself from my father. Went straight down. I had her say, I am radiating with my light, with God's light. Super strong. Shielding is built from fear. When we say, oh, I'm going to shield, we have that feeling that everything out there is dark, that we need to be scared of everything, that we have to put up this big protection to keep ourselves away. But what I found is as we radiate light, that only those things that can bear your light can come into your space. This client's father came up and the light was too much for him to bear, and he couldn't come close to her. And it was from her positivity and her bright light, not her fear of his darkness and or what the boogeyman that's out there that's going to get us. We don't realize how much that actually weakens us, and that fear does not create a shield at all. In fact, it actually collapses our shield. So I want to talk to you about how to keep your light bright, even amidst challenges, even amidst things that can create fear. It's really important for us to keep our light bright. And when we shine with our light, when we radiate God's light, then we have a very powerful shield around us that that is a protection. It's interesting because, you know, you can go into a completely dark room and light one candle, and that candle can illuminate that whole room. But all the darkness of that room has zero power to put out the little flame of one candle. And that's the way we are. There's a saying some of you may have heard where we have power. He has power to bruise our heel, but we have power to crush his head. And I find that often there's people that really empower the darkness. They give it a lot of credit, and they sometimes actually move some of their own accountability and responsibility onto that. And I find that that doesn't necessarily serve them and their mental health and their emotional health and their spiritual health. That we need to focus on our little flame and being able to increase that flame. There was a man, and I'm sorry the timing of this with the plane crashes that have been happening, but there was a man that was in a plane crash. He was the sole survivor of this plane crash, and I saw him on an interview. And he was actually an atheist. But he said that when he was leaving to leave the plane, he turned around and looked at all of the people that were in the seats that were actually dying at that very moment. How many of us see a whole bunch of people die all at once? I mean, that's really a tragedy. But he learned a very important lesson from that. He saw light coming up out of each person's body. He saw light coming up. And he said some of the lights were really bright as they came up out of the bodies, but some of them were very dim. And he said at that moment, he made a decision that he was going to live his life so that when he passed away, that the light that would come from him would be a bright light. And he determined to live his life that way. I'm responsible for the energy I release in the world. So this is a quote from Jeffrey M. Bradshaw that I really love. Every person who lives in this world radiates light, which affects and influences every other person in the world. Our choices in life determine what we really are. The radiance of the light that emanates from our countenance is determined by the choices we make, and is a powerful force in human relationships. And every person is the recipient of that radiation. The Savior was conscious of that reality, and to a degree, so are we. Whenever Jesus came into the presence of an individual, he was conscious of a light emanating from that person's soul, and which was mirrored in his countenance. He knew the behavior and conduct and the choices a person had made, because that behavior and those choices were reflected by the radiating light in one's countenance. We must make nobler choices. We must not encourage vile thoughts or low aspirations. We shall radiate them if we do. Every moment of life, we are affecting to a degree the life of every other person with whom we may come in contact and who comes within the sphere of our influence. Every person is affecting every other person who lives. We cannot for one moment escape this emanation, this radiation of light that emanates from our countenance. Life is a constant state of radiation and absorption of light. To exist is to radiate light. To exist is to be the recipient of light. And we choose the qualities we permit to be radiated by the light within us, determined by our behavior and the choices we make. So why does this really matter? When I talked about fear not being the purpose of shielding, when a musical note is out of tune, the frequency really slows down. Wah, 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 wah. It's a really slow frequency. When it's in tune, bing, it's a really fast frequency. And frequency equals light. So when we keep our frequency high, then our light is going to be brighter. What is vibrational frequency? Everything in the universe is energy. All of this energy vibrates on different frequencies. Every person has their own vibration. The vibration of light is the highest vibration, water being second. The higher your vibration, the closer you are to light's vibration. A lot of this goes hand in hand with Tamara's presentation. So those that have followed a lot of these conferences have probably seen this scale before of Dr. David Hawkins and how he calibrated the frequencies that correlate to different emotions. And you notice that there's 200 and below, and then there's that are kind of negative. They have down arrows, and then the ones that are above that have up arrows. 85% of the world is in the lower 200. And so wouldn't you think that the whole world would just collapse with the force of that much negativity? It's an interesting little analogy. When two cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were going to be burned to the ground, Abraham went to God and said, if Lot can find 10 righteous men, will you spare the burning of these two cities? And God said, yes. That is one of the most powerful lessons about the counterbalance of the power of light over darkness. Your light is not only affecting you. You radiating your light is also a protection to others. It uplifts others. It elevates others. It's just like a pillow. If I take a pillow and I raise in the middle, everything else raises around it. And that's the same principle of us when we build up our light. It's not only for our protection, but it also is lifting everything around us. Just like one little flame of a candle in a room can illuminate everything in the whole entire room, even though those things are actually in darkness. They can be illuminated by one candle. Another way to increase our light. At the sign of triumph, Satan's host doth flee. On then Christian soldiers on to victory. Hell's foundations quiver at the shout of praise. Brothers, lift your voices, loud your anthems raise. And so praising God in all things is another way to increase our light, to push that light out, and to be able to be protected from the darkness. I actually have a whole class, and I wrote a book called The Miracle Principle that's all about the power of praising God, and how that can uplift us. This is a story that I found that I just thought, oh, it just inspired me. I loved it. So I'm going to share it with you. It's by Alexander Papadopoulos. When I was a small child during World War II, we were very poor and we lived in a remote village. A German motorcycle had been wrecked in that place. I tried to find all the pieces and put them together, but it was not possible. It left a little, it broke the mirror. The mirror broke. I tried to find all the pieces and put them together, but it was not possible. So I kept only the largest piece. He pulled a round quarter-sized mirror out of his pocket. And by scratching it on a stone, I made it round. I began to play with it as a toy and became fascinated by the fact that I could reflect light into dark places where the sun would never shine, in deep holes and crevices and dark closets. It became a game for me to get light into the most inaccessible places I could find. I kept the little mirror, and as I went about my growing up, I would take it out in idle moments and continue the challenge of the game. As I became a man, I grew to understand that this was not just a child's game, but a metaphor for what I might do with my life. I came to understand that I am not the light or the source of light, but light, truth, understanding, knowledge is there, and it will only shine in many dark places if I reflect it. I am a fragment of a mirror whose whole design and shape I do not know. Nevertheless, with what I have, I can reflect light into dark places of this world, into the black places in the hearts of men, and change some things in some people. Perhaps others may see and do likewise. This is what I am about. This is the meaning of my life. Isn't that inspiring? Oh, I just love that story. And I just think as I have tried to apply that in my life, that my light is not only for me, but also to reflect light into the darkness. You know, think about Christ's ministry. Where did he go? He went to the darkness, and he reflected light there. He brought love. He brought service. He brought unselfishness, and he ministered in the dark places. And so as we can increase our light and call upon God's light, we too can reflect light into dark places. So there's some really cool stuff. You know, when it said the frequency and it said water is the second one. Now, a lot of you have probably heard of The Secret Life of Water. But for those that haven't, it's an experiment that Masaru Emoto did, that he took water and put it in jars and put labels on it. And then he flash froze droplets of the water and took pictures under the microscope. And he saw how much water is affected by our thoughts and our words. The top pictures there, the photo on the left is an ice crystal of some polluted water. And then Masaru Emoto actually blessed the water. And on the second picture, it's that same water after he blessed it. Isn't that amazing? So often, you know, especially with our traumas, our emotional traumas, we tend to think that I'm damaged goods. It affects our self-worth. It affects our relationships. It affects our connection to God. And because we just say, you know, I'm this polluted, I'm this polluted water, and I'm traumatized, and I can't, my life is that's what it is. And I think this really simple little example of what a blessing and the blessing of God, and even as I'll show you, the positivity, that if we start using positivity in our lives, how it actually transforms us. This book, I'm just going to show, it has lots of pictures of examples. And this one here is 9/11. Isn't that interesting? That was not a good day, but you can see how things are transformed with prayer. The bottom, the one on the left says, thank you. The one on the right is you idiot. And see how much that changes. Our body is 75 to 80% water. So just think about a jar that there's no emotion to it. There's no tone of voice. There's no history. There's no filters. Just simply a jar of water with a word taped on the jar. And this has this much effect. And just think of the power of our words and our thoughts when there's all those other things behind it. Here's thank you, you make me sick, love and appreciation, and a water molecule before prayer and after prayer. Now, this brings me to, I went to get a massage from an amazing massage therapist. And but I noticed she had all these bracelets on her arms. She had crystals all around the room. She had sage, and I mean, she had done a lot to protect herself from me and from clients. That was her practice, to protect herself from clients. And I do believe that saging and crystals and all these things there's a lot of energy to them, and they can very much serve as a tool to help us in clearing spaces. But the most powerful thing is our manifestation to that, our intention. I'll often muscle test somebody. I'll have them do an energy technique, for instance, and then, I'll muscle test them and it works. Then I'll have them just manifest that in their mind, that same technique without actually doing the technique, just manifest it in their mind. And immediately they test strong, even though they didn't do that technique. I think we underestimate ourselves sometimes. You can manifest the energy of crystals and sage and all these tools. Excuse me. You can manifest that energy yourself. You are a creator. You have the power of God within you, and you can manifest those things. I think those kinds of earthly tools are great to use. But when you bless those tools, they're going to be even more powerful. They're going to have a higher frequency. And I think, it's just not being dependent on external things is kind of the point I'm trying to make. Knowing what power is within you and the power of what your light is. This next slide, I just had to share because I think it's so cool. Look at the photo of a water droplet from a volcano in Hawaii, and then an embryo. And also, think of the yin yang sign. Isn't that fascinating? I don't know. I just find things like that just really interesting. So I had to share with all of you. Angel words is another really cool visual of what actually is going on in us internally. So I have this book called Angel Words. And Doreen Virtue and her son actually did recordings of lots of phrases to show the size of the frequency of different words. And so there's some examples like, I nearly had a heart attack is really small. It really made me jump is bigger. That's a real pain in the neck is really small and compressed. That's a bit of a challenge is bigger. And I'm between a rock and a hard place. It's really compressed. I move through life with ease and grace, opens up. And so I just think how often in our lives, we restrict ourselves. We compress things. We're the ones that bring it down. And as we can become conscious of how we speak and our words, how we can actually change the frequency immediately. And that frequency hits other people too. So it's also affecting their frequency. It's kind of funny. I have a habit of saying, oh my gosh. And my little grandkids have learned, oh my goodness. And so, man, they're like 2 and 4, and they are calling me, oh my goodness, Grandma, oh my goodness. And it really does have a different frequency. Oh my goodness. And so I'm learning from my little toddler grandkids to speak, more positively. So anyway, we can all learn from that, but just being conscious and aware of how we speak, because we create our reality with the way that we speak. And I also wrote a book called Lessons from a Lighthouse. Lighthouse Principles, Lighting the Way in Challenging Relationships. So if we compare ourselves to a lighthouse, the lighthouse gets totally beat up by the stormy sea, but it doesn't fall if it's built on the rock. The lighthouse doesn't jump into the stormy sea and swim after the sailors. The lighthouse doesn't run around the island looking for problems to solve. The lighthouse can't force those sailors to row their boats. The lighthouse isn't the destination. It just points the way home. And a lighthouse doesn't do anyone any good unless it has a light within it. And the lighthouse is the most valuable when it is the darkest out at night. And the brighter that light is and the further it can reach through the darkness, the more it can help the sailors lost at sea. And how many of us have people in our lives that are a little lost? And when we want to try to tell them what to do or control them, or we just jump into the storm with them, where's the guidance coming from? Because they will look for the brightest light to follow. They will. And if you're not that bright light pointing to home, pointing to God, they'll find some other light, and that's what they'll follow. I had the most beautiful thing just happened to me the other day. I had a woman call me, and she'd read the book, and she said that she's requesting that on her tombstone that they put she was a lighthouse to her family, and put a lighthouse on her tombstone. And it made me cry. But I have to keep reminding myself of this all the time. But it's just sometimes having kind of a picture and an analogy is really helpful. So we calibrate ourselves to the 5 people we spend the most time with, and also other stimuli that comes in around us. Surround yourself with people who clearly love your light and add to it. But remember to be the one that elevates and inspires. So this is an example of something I've done in classes and retreats. I take 2 shirts and I roll them all up so you can't see what's on them. And I just hand them to somebody, and then I muscle test them. And on one of them, they go down, and the other one, they stay strong. And then I open the shirts up. And the one where they go weak is the one with a skull on it. And then the one that they're strong has a smiley face on it. Even the clothes we wear. I had a friend, it's really interesting. She went to see the play Wicked, and she got a shirt from the play. And she was just having this stabbing pain in the back of her shoulder. And she just couldn't figure out what in the heck was going on. And that night she took her shirt off, and it said Wicked right there. It was literally, I don't know, inviting pain right there. I just think, wow, that's really wild. But we calibrate to all the stimuli. We calibrate to the kinds of foods we eat, and to the music that we listen to. The Masaru Emoto also played music to water, and you can see the results here. The difference between heavy metal music and classical music, or sound of music, Edelweiss. So the music will either elevate us or it can bring us down. Everything changes when you start to emit your own frequency rather than absorbing the frequencies around you. When you start imprinting your intent on the universe rather than receiving an imprint from existence. And this kind of goes back to the reflecting light into dark places. We don't have control of surrounding ourselves with everything perfect all the time. We just live in the real world. We just do. And we may have family members that we spend a lot of time with that don't always uplift us. And so this is why it's so important that we work on our light and our relationship with God so that we can emit that light and emit that kind of frequency. I do a class on auras as well, and how to keep your aura bright. And so I just have these examples of a dim light versus a bright. Every single aura personality has its light side and it has its shadow side. Every coin has 2 sides, so we have things that are in our aura personality, that those traits that are in the light side, and we have those traits that are in shadow. And so again, consciousness is the choice I'm making here, is the behavior that I'm doing here. Is it brightening my light? Is it strengthening my aura? Or is it dimming my light and decreasing my aura? I do a muscle test. Those of you that might use muscle testing, I have somebody put their arm out and hold. I go right in front of their solar plexus, and then I just pull my hand away and see where their arm goes down. And when I have them say different things. And so I'll have them say, I'm really worried about da da da. Ooh, boy, that makes their arm go down really fast. I have faith and trust that God will help me through this challenge. They'll stay super strong. Praise God for this challenge. Really strong, really strong. It's really an interesting way to be able to see immediately how things affect your frequency, because your body will respond right away to the stimuli, whether it's weakening you or it's strengthening you. And also, I teach a class about muscle testing, and that's sometimes, let's say a supplement or something. It doesn't necessarily mean that's bad. It's just not in harmony with you. And so that's another way to be able to kind of see what's in harmony with your frequency in your body, what strengthens you, what uplifts you. So this is a really good little summary of things we can do to raise our vibration. It's interesting. I listened to this neurosurgeon, this podcast about this neurosurgeon, and he was saying if he could do all of his surgery outside in the sunlight, he would. And part of his therapy for his patients, he said, my patients are let out of the hospital, a week sooner than most other patients, because he actually has them go out in their bed, out into the sunlight to heal. And he also really, really talks about red light therapy. And so if you've, like Lumi lights, I don't know if you know about those, but I do those every day. Those are awesome. But when sunlight and going out barefoot on the ground and, grounding and nature, the heart chakra is the color green. And I just think, go out into nature, and it's like everything's green. It's like, well, not right now, but generally everything's green that God creates. And it's like, oh, this is God's heart out there. When I'm out walking and in nature, that's God's heart. And so nature is something that I highly recommend. Sunshine, just so good for you. Gratitude, kindness, gratitude. I do a lot of couples therapy, and I try to say every night, if you could each say to each other something you're grateful for that the other did that day, it really starts to really improve that relationship. Because all day you're looking for something to say that night. And gratitude to God. Kindness, love, joy, passion, forgiveness. Forgiveness is really trusting in God's justice and mercy, and not feeling like you're the one that has to collect something from someone that they probably don't even have to give you. Acceptance, sunshine, walking in nature, breathing deeply, breathing. When you inhale and then exhale twice as long as you inhale. And then just visualize, because visualization is so important. Visualize exhaling out fear and negativity and stress and, all those anger, whatever. Yoga and exercise, laughing, smiling, hugging. Connection is so important. I always say, I'm never the one to stop the hug. I will hug somebody as long as they want to hug. Singing, dancing, singing music. People that struggle with depression or anxiety and stuff, man, playing uplifting music can just change the mood instantly. I talk about like a slideshow in your brain. And when an intrusive thought comes, a negative thought, a traumatic thought, you need to be ready with your emotional first aid kit over here, and emotional first aid pictures, and just slide that out and slide in the other one. You have 7 seconds to do that. When a thought comes into your mind, for 7 seconds, you're going to have a visceral reflexive reaction to that. After 7 seconds, you're choosing to keep that thought alive. So you've got 7 seconds to slide that thought out and slide in a song. You cannot sing a happy song and have this intrusive thought at the same time. Your brain can't do it. It's impossible. And so my little granddaughter used to come in when she'd have a nightmare. Grandma, sing "I Am a Child of God" to me. Just want me to sing to her so that she could go back to sleep. And she just, at a very young age, knew that that was the way that she could deal with her trauma from her nightmare, was singing. Dancing. I had a really good friend who taught me this. She had horrible trauma. And she said that she would set a timer for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and she would let herself feel that trauma. She would cry, she would sob, she would wail. But when the timer went off, she would play dance music and she would force herself to get up and dance. And I thought, wow, that's so emotionally healthy. She said it's the only way she survived it. She didn't deny her trauma and her negative feelings, but she didn't let them control her. She would allow herself to feel them, and then she would sing and dance. And she taught her brain that it wasn't hopeless. Life wasn't over. That she taught her brain that there could still be happiness and joy. We talked about grounding, earthing, raw whole foods, really so important. We're holistic beings. We can't be at this level physically, and this level emotionally, and this level financially, and this level, socially and mentally, all over the place. We will calibrate. And I think the nutrition we eat is one of the easiest things to calibrate, to raise our frequency and our vibration on the other things. Creativity. We are creators. What's the very first scripture in the Bible? God created. We are children of God. We create. And when somebody is sad and depressed, I ask them what they're creating, because I believe that creativity is one of the keys to joy. Lowering your vibration, junk food, alcohol, toxic relationships, negative thoughts, toxins, toxic products, excessive red meat, white sugar, medication, radiation, yelling, arguing, holding on to the past, anger, resentment, and guilt. And this is how to raise your spiritual vibration. I like these. For your mind, meditate. And, some people have a hard time just sitting still and meditating. And if you do, make other things you do meditative. Sometimes cleaning the house can be very meditative. Going for a walk, can be very meditative. Just listening to music, just try to do things that are meditative. We talked about gratitude, service. Christ said, if you love me, feed my sheep. If you love me, serve. And we really grow to love the people that we serve. Stop watching TV, which is just another way of saying control the stimuli that you invite into your body. Sometimes the different media sources can actually be portals for inviting. You bless your house, you want a protection around your house, and you bless it and you consecrate it. And then you open up portals inside and invite darkness right back into the middle of it. Think your own thoughts. Spend time in nature. Your body, stretch and move, detox, ingest plants as food, medicine, breathe consciously, relax, get enough sleep, walk barefoot. So we talked about some of those. This saying is really a mantra that I try to live by. I love this so much. It's by James L. Farrell in the book, The Peace Giver. We all shine forth a portion of the Lord's glory, and we shine more brightly when we are living closest to him. Usually, we do not perceive this light with our eyes, but you have felt it at times when you have been in the presence of saintly men and women, those who so fully reflect the Savior's light that it is tangible, if not visible, to those around them. To be in their presence is like being in the presence of a perfectly sung note. Their lives resonate, they pierce, they move, they motivate, they sing. And this because they live in tune with the Master. And this is what inspired me. My email address is Let Us Be in Tune. And I think as we can strive to be in tune with the Master and to have our lives motivate, sing, resonate, pierce, move. Aren't those words so inspiring? Like, what kind of energy do I bring into a room when I walk into a room? Do I elevate that room? Do I uplift that room, or, do I bring that energy down in that room? And so really focusing on that. I just wanted to share one thing that I think is really high vibration. I have an oil that I sell that's called 𝐼𝐸. It's an artist that actually had a near-death experience, and this was the smell that she said she smelled. And it took her 10 years to get the perfect thing, and she said it was inspired. But anyway, this is one of my favorite high frequency things. I put it on my third eye, put it on the top of my spine, and then I have 6 different books that I've read. If you want to go to my website, let me go to the 6 different books I've written that I'd love to have you take a look at. And I also have a brain tunes program for children with songs, and teaches brain techniques and energy techniques to help children. So thank you so much for this invitation to speak. And I have some things I contributed to the workbook. So I hope that you are able to get the workbook and see that there. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. You always help shed light to help bring a different perspective, especially when you're speaking. You help me see things differently, look at things differently, and also help me understand things differently too, because everything has a deeper understanding. There's always something deeper that you can go with. Yeah.
Well, I love the
thank
opportunity.
you.
You always learn what you teach. So
Yes.
I love having opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy.